Hello everybody, I'm Quentin and I have one of these Dyson battery powered vacuum cleaners. It's okay, it's part brilliance and part rubbish as you'd expect from Dyson. However, it comes with lots of accessories and in fact I have a whole bag full of them here. Now the holder, you're wondering why I'm telling you all this, there is a reason. The holder here has attachments so you can clip a couple of accessories on here, but we bought this as part of a kit and it comes with loads and there's no convenient way to hang those on the wall. The ones I use repeatedly, I'd like to be able to just pick up, plug in and go. So, as far as I can gather, nobody makes a Dyson accessory mount, but that doesn't matter because next door I have a new toy which will help us deal with that.
Yes, I have finally treated myself to a 3D printer. Now I'm a bit behind here, many of my friends have been using these for years, but for me this is brand new. I have never even used one before, let alone owned one. So I thought I would say a little bit about my experiences in the first couple of days. This is a Prusa i3 Mark III S Plus, and it's a very nice one. You can get good printers for about half or a third of the price of this, but in the end I read the reviews and this seemed to be the one to get. Certainly I've been very happy with my purchase so far. It seems to be well put together and it comes with a great set of training materials and all the accessories you need to get you started. One thing to note if you are in the UK like me is that these are made in Czechoslovakia, and if you import them into the UK you will need to remember that there'll be 20% VAT added to the online prices. Prusa actually use their own printers to make many of the components in the printers that they sell, so I figured they ought to know what they're doing. And most of, I think all of the components actually are available online as open source designs if you want, for example, to do your own modifications to them or to print replacement parts. One of the issues I did have early on is a very common one. When your piece is printing, it's important that it sticks suitably firmly to the heated base on which it sits. And if you look online, you'll find that first layer adhesion is a very common problem that people talk about a lot. If your part comes unstuck with the forces that are operating on it as it's printed, then you are trying to print in midair and what you get is spaghetti. I had 2 or 3 of these, and sometimes they can happen 2 or 3 hours into a print, which you can imagine is pretty frustrating. It took me a little while to work out what I needed to do to make sure everything worked smoothly, predictably and reliably. So what worked for me was removing the magnetically attached steel base, very nice system by the way, taking it downstairs and washing it thoroughly with washing up liquid and water, then bringing it back and wiping it with a very pure solution of isopropyl alcohol, and then as much as possible not touching it with my fingers afterwards, but using tools where possible to remove things from the surface so that I didn't get the grease from my fingers onto the plate itself. But there's one other thing that's very important, and that's getting correct the distance between the printing head and the plate for the very first layer, because the base layer needs to be squished onto the surface by just the right amount, not too much and not too little. Now, there is a calibration process built into the printer, in this case, but that didn't work very well for me. And you do want to get this right because the first layer that you're putting down is a small fraction of a millimeter thick, and very fine adjustments can make quite a difference to how successful it is. In the end, I got great results by using a system called Life Adjust Z by a guy named Jeff Jordan. Now I think he probably meant to call it Live Adjust Z because it involves printing out a design that he came up with which prints diagonally here, and partway through, halfway across the diagonal, you change the Z adjustment, you make a live adjustment to it, and then you can see the effect of these very small changes. Now, I found out that somewhere around minus 1.65 millimeters was good for me. 1.63 wasn't, it was a bit too loose. 1.67, minus 1.67 was perfect. And once I used that, then everything stuck beautifully and I started being able to print successfully. Now, I had a second toy which arrived on this same day, which was some of these Apple AirTags, but unfortunately the holders for them weren't available and didn't arrive at the same time, and I wanted to put one on my keyring. So one of the first things I was able to successfully print was somebody else's design for a keyring holder for an Apple AirTag, and that was very satisfying. But in the end, printing other people's designs is only going to take you so far. And so we're back to our vacuum cleaner accessories.
Okay, now, Dyson accessories come in two types. There are simple ones, brushes, tubes, whatever you call those little things that get into corners. And they are basically they just have cylinders on. They're gripped by a little clip when they go into the tube on the vacuum cleaner. But for our purposes, we just need something for them to sit in. And so all I needed was to measure the diameter here, measure the length of the tube. These are vital accessories, these micrometers, for anyone doing 3D printing. And that's fine, I could just make a tube for it to sit in. However, some of them are slightly more complex, like this one, because this has a motor in that can drive the brushes. And so it takes power, and this is provided by the vacuum cleaner. And to make sure that you can't plug these things that need power into, say, extension tubes that don't provide it, then the shape is slightly different. So these ones have little lugs on either side there, and so I also had to measure those so that I could leave slots in my tube so that these things would sit in it as well. So I went away, I did some sketches, and I came up with a prototype. So I got my first print, and my first prototype looked like this, and I was pretty pleased with this actually. It does most of what I wanted it to do. And sure enough, if I screw it to the wall with this nicely countersunk screw, I drop my accessory in, I can see that's going to work very nicely. But there are a couple of things that I wasn't happy about with this. And the first is that if you take one of the motorized accessories and you put it in, it's too tight a fit. It's too tricky to get in there, and you might not get it out again. So basically, these slots here that I'd left for the for those ridges down the side of the tube just weren't quite big enough. I needed an extra 0.5 millimeter or something on those. But that also gave me cause for concern, because it may not be obvious here. Well, actually, I think you can see it. The wall of this is really quite thin here where I've gone out to leave room in those slots. So I was concerned that if you, especially had a long accessory and you put any force on it this way, it might just split. This stuff's pretty strong, but I didn't like the look of that. So I wanted to make those a bit bigger and make them stronger. So I wanted to put some extra bulges on the outside. And then lastly, I was concerned that if you had perhaps a taller and heavier accessory in this, and you're fixing it to the wall with just one screw here, then it might be rather top heavy and flop over. I don't have any screw holes at the bottom, but I couldn't easily put any screw holes at the bottom because you couldn't get a screwdriver round past this very easily. So what I thought I would do is just raise the screw hole up a bit so that it was about here, so that the centre of gravity was lower relative to the screw, even if you had a heavier accessory. And so it was back to the drawing board for version 2. But it does pay to produce a prototype version. Expect that the first one you make is probably not going to be right. Not necessarily because you made errors in your actual production of it, but because there are some things it's really hard to kind of work out until you see it tangibly, think about how it's going to work in real life. Okay, back to the drawing board.
The drawing board, in my case, was Tinkercad, a simple but remarkably effective free design package created by Autodesk, and it just runs in your browser, though it did seem to prefer Firefox to my more normal Safari. You can just drag shapes from the panel on the right, scale them appropriately, and then merge them with the other parts that already make up your design. You can also use any of the parts as holes if you want to remove material to make slots, screw holes, and so on. You can then export your design as an STL file, and your browser just downloads it. Now, STL files simply describe the shape of the surface of the object you want to create. You need to use some slicing software to turn that into a series of horizontal slices that the printer can print. I just use the free Prusa slicer software, and there are lots of things you can adjust, but I got away with pretty much standard settings for the PLA material I was using to print. The slicer produces the G-code file that actually contains instructions that your printer understands, and at the simplest level you can just put this on an SD card, plug it into the printer, and select it from the printer's menu. So there are several stages you need to understand, but I, who had never done any of this before, was able to learn how to use all of these in about a day, at least enough to create and print this fairly simple object. A very interesting enhancement is to control the printer remotely using a wonderful bit of software called Octoprint. I got a Raspberry Pi, connected it to the USB port on my printer, and booted it with the standard Octoprint image. I also plugged in a USB camera, a pretty crummy one, but it was all I had lying about. Octoprint will let you upload G-code files to the printer without using an SD card, monitor what's going on, stop and start things, and even record a time-lapse movie of your print, which would look better if I'd used a better camera. But if you arrange for it to be accessible remotely, then you can also keep an eye on long-running prints while you're away from home and stop them if anything seems to be going wrong. So here we are 4.5 hours later, and we have our enhanced version 2. And you can see there is greater strength in the side walls here. I've added a little extra bracing there. We've raised this up a bit so that the center of gravity will now be lower relative to the screw. And the key question, well, this fits in easily, no problem there. And put it whichever way around you wanted. And the things with the slots do also fit in very easily. So, yeah, very pleased with that. Time to go and hang it on the wall, I think. Well, here we are, the moment of truth. I have put this on the wall, and sure enough, it does hold my Dyson accessories very nicely. Let's try another one here. Okay, now I'm ridiculously chuffed with that. You could say that this is ridiculous because I spent a lot of time doing this, printing first this prototype and then the version 2. And the time it took, this takes like 4 and a bit hours to print, and you could argue that I could probably have whittled one out of a bit of wood with a penknife in less time. But it's been remarkably satisfying experience for me, more than I was expecting. I think because this was, no one has ever made this before, right? This is a complete new creation, and it was a picture in my mind which became a sketch on a bit of paper, which became a drawing on the computer, and then which very slowly materialized like a sort of really slow motion teleport into something that I can screw on the wall and is actually a useful household accessory. So for me, it's been fun. Thank you for watching. I hope it's been interesting for you too, and if you do try this, I hope you have as much fun as I have. Now, I should probably go and do some vacuum. Oh, I need that accessory too.